Hey, it's Scott, ROCKFILE, back with another podcast review for you. Let's talk about the 2022 documentary, Squaring the Circle. Now, before you tune out on documentary, this is a rock and roll documentary. Squaring the Circle is the story of Hipgnosis. There's a G in there. Hipgnosis was the company who made some of the greatest album covers of all time. Turns out the documentary is the first documentary from artist Anton Corbijn. You know the name. He's been a photographer, video guy, worked with some of the biggest bands of all time. So the documentary is done in a very interesting style. It's all in black and white, but the album covers. Covers the three people that formed Hipgnosis about the time that Pink Floyd was getting formed. Now, if none of this sounds interesting to you, I get that. But let me go a step further. The actor Colin Firth was one of the executive producers on this. It's filmed very well. It's very interesting. If you have no interest in music at all, it's interesting how these guys got together, got caught up in the 60s, and just kind of exploded onto the art scene with some interesting ideas on how to do album covers and why they did album covers. These guys were a bigger influence than you can possibly imagine. I also didn't know where the story went. I didn't know that they kind of imploded and, weren't really a thing anymore. What makes this one of the best documentaries I've seen in a long time is because it not only talks to the three artists, including one who's passed away, it talks to the artists who made the music for the album covers, namely David Gilmour and Roger Waters of Pink Floyd, the three surviving members of Led Zeppelin, Paul McCartney, Peter Gabriel, Noel Gallagher, the members of 10cc, and more. All of these people talk about the albums and how they were made. You go behind the scenes on Dark Side of the Moon, behind the scenes on Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here, the album cover with the gentleman on fire on the front. You want to know more about that? They go into it. The movie is divided up into these major turning points in their careers, how the album covers got better and bigger, the bands got better and bigger, and it's interesting how that their artwork and their styles and such were not only just influential, but grew as the bands grew. It was them working with these artists that kind of ping-ponged them back to their art, if that makes any sense. They had great ideas. They'd bring it to the artist would take it somewhere else, and then the collaboration would give you Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here. They flash up some albums. I didn't know they did T-Rex. I had no idea some of the albums covers they did. Of course, I knew the bigger ones. They put Dark Side of the Moon on the cover of the poster. I'm very excited about it because, the description when I bought this, by the way, there's a new movie company I tried and I really like, Atomic Movie Store. One of my friends at a 4K group suggested them. I went in and they had some kind of out-of-print movies that had just recently gone out of print, still had them for decent prices or less. I got a special edition of Squaring the Circle with the slipcover, which you wouldn't get that if you bought it from like Amazon or whatever. Anyway, this is available to stream on Netflix. And if you have any interest in music, in art, album covers and what they used to be, now that they're little files on iTunes and things like that, this was a really good documentary. It's about an hour and 40 minutes. It's not too long. Like I said, it's got an art style to it. This is the first documentary from a guy that worked with Depeche Mode and U2 and people like that. So it does have a lot of style, which I really like in a documentary. And the fact that they actually talk to the rock stars who made the music and have footage from the rock stars when they were making the album cover. There is a scene, and I don't want to give too much away because there's a lot of surprises in here, but when they're filming Paul McCartney's Band on the Run, I didn't realize how many famous people are in that picture on that album cover. There were a lot of famous people who had nothing to do with the music in that picture on the front. Bruce Cockburn? Really? I had no idea. Anyway, you will learn a lot and you will be entertained. By the end of it, I felt like I had learned, I'm ROCKFILE here, felt that I had not only learned something, but it was a very entertaining hour and a half to hear all of these stories directly from the horses' mouths. Not a perfect documentary in all senses of the word, because not everybody, grandma may not appreciate this. On Rotten Tomatoes, only 18 critics have reviewed it. It's about a 76 out of 100. Most people like it, though. For somebody like me, though, this is right up my alley and probably my favorite documentary in the last, decade or longer. I haven't watched a documentary like this that turned me on in a long time. There are some sobering facts in it and some, they get into the drug use. They get into how the company kind of imploded, how they got too big for their britches and things like that. It's a good documentary because it gives you all the story, warts and all. 2 of the guys are still around and they're still working. So Squaring the Circle, the story of hypnosis, there's a G in there, hypnosis, it's very interesting. And if you're a rock fan, it's a must-see. So it came out in 2022, was re-released in 2023, and finally hit Netflix last year. Give it a shot. 1 hour and 40 minutes of Squaring the Circle is a great documentary. You'll learn something, and you'll find out the story behind some of the most iconic album covers of all time. Posters we had on our walls as kids. These guys created them. You'll find out how. Very interesting. Squaring the Circle, a documentary I highly recommend and one of my favorite movies I've watched recently. I'm Scott, I'm ROCKFILE. More podcasts, more drone videos, and a whole lot more is on the way. So thank you for listening. Happy weekend.